Well, I came out of the railway station at Emsworth with my parents. I was 5 years old at the time, and I was on my way to my grandparents' house, to where we'd been evacuated during the Portsmouth Blitz. And there was a tremendous bang in the sky, and I can remember looking up into the sky and watching a torch coming down and landing what appeared to be about a quarter of a mile away. And the noise of the engines was like similar to the noise of the Formula One engines at a race meeting, and there was this tremendous thump which you could feel through your feet as it hit the ground. And it was dark. It was on the 8th of February, 8 o'clock at night, and my parents took me home. And the following morning, on my way to school, I went down to the river to where the crash occurred, and I saw the Queen Mary trailer with the wreckage on board, with the men trying to get it across the stream, and boys who were older and braver than I was were running around it trying to pull pieces off of it, with the RAF flight sergeant running around after them trying to stop them.
On February the 8th, 1944, Second Lieutenant Jan Bouge, a trainee Norwegian navigator, was on his second only flight with 85 Squadron out of RAF West Malling in Kent. His trainer was Flight Lieutenant Arthur Woods, piloting their de Havilland Mosquito. The night training exercise, Bullseye, was for the attack of German bombers, in this case simulated by a Wellington. The Wellington had flown down from RAF Finningley in Yorkshire, turned round in the English Channel, and was heading for Portsmouth as if it were raiding the city. The Mosquito was fitted with airborne interception radar, and Lieutenant Bouge was learning how to use it effectively. Unfortunately, the pilot is thought to have been blinded by searchlights from the Portsmouth defences reflecting on the underside of clouds. Tragically, just near Emsworth, the Mosquito collided with the Wellington, separating the tail section from the main body. The Mosquito came down in Brookmeadow, the front section of the Wellington in a field near Southbourne, and the tail section, containing the rear gunner, Bill Varley, fluttered down into Prinstead Harbour like a sycamore seed. The Wellington had a crew of 7 with an average age of 21. The pilot was 20-year-old Flight Sergeant Ronald Ramsey. All 9 lives were lost. 2 Southbourne Sea Scouts, Owen Gape and Cyril Mapley, were the first to the scene in Prinstead Harbour and tried in vain to save Bill Varley.
I was 14 at the time, and looking now at lads who are 14, I think was I ever that small and young, but I was. And I've been talking to Cyril, and we remembered the details of this so clearly. I don't know why it has stuck in my mind all these years. But we heard the crash and looked up. We were just out here in the lane, you say. None of these buildings were here, and most of these houses were out here. And we saw the back end, the rear end of the bomber floating down, rather like a sycamore leaf, going round and round. And fortunately the tide was out, and again, being local lads, we were aware of where we could walk out, or run out, or try and run, without going too far into the mud on either side to get stuck. Cyril was there before me, and into the rear gunner's turret, or what was left of it, and we discovered that we could not get the poor lad out. Being the boy, it was me that was sent back to get a hacksaw, which he's just reminded me of, and I took the hacksaw out, and we managed to cut sufficient of the metal away until we could move this boy, all except one boot. We couldn't get his boot out, and actually brought him ashore without one flying boot. Again, I'd been sent back on the orders of my senior hand because we wondered how we could get him to the shore. I would add, by the way, that we're not just the 2 of us. I think there were 3 or 4 at that time, were there not? And for the life of me, I can't remember who else was there. Brought him across along here to a point just here in front of us on the beach. That's where we got him back. And that was all those years ago.
On the 8th of February 1995, more than 50 years later, in a ceremony involving about 60 people, a plaque dedicated to Arthur Woods was placed on the then new bridge at Brook Meadow. A plaque was also unveiled at Southbourne Sea Scouts, marking the bravery of Owen, Cyril and their accomplices. The Mosquito pilot, Arthur Woods, was a film director.
How did you come to start researching into Arthur Woods?
Well, I've always loved British film, and about 2.5 years ago I happened to be leafing through some books at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. about British film, and I came across a number of references to an Arthur Woods, who was an outstanding young director killed in World War II. And the more I read about him, the more interested I became. What was a film director doing fighting and combat? If you look at the war records of a lot of the film directors of the period, none of them took, or very few if any of them took, such an active role. At the same time, the information about Woods was very sketchy, even as to the year of his death. And that led me to start researching his background, and I discovered eventually that he served with 85 Squadron as a night fighter pilot with one of the most famous groups in the RAF, under the command of John Cat's Eyes Cunningham, which came as a tremendous surprise. It also shed some light back on his filmmaking, because Woods was an ardent pilot who'd taken up flying after making a short film about Amy Johnson, and he qualified at Brooklands in 1932 and then flew all the stunts in his own movies. So a career in the Air Force did not seem at that point to be so incongruous with his movie career.
So how important was he pre-war to the British film industry?
He was regarded as one of the up-and-coming young film directors, and I believe to this day that he was the only film director who actually served in combat. It really is quite a tragic story, and I hope that this event will bring a little more attention to what he gave the film industry while he was active. He had a career of only 7 years, and what might have been